Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I am your host, Samuel, and today we have with us a very special guest who goes by the name of Dorian Jordan. Now, Dorian's a fascinating character. He's been in the medical sales profession for 16 years in a variety of companies, and he's now with a leading med tech company in the medical sales space as a surgical sales market representative. But what makes his story so compelling are the experiences he's had and the perspective it's given him. But I'm not going to spoil it. I will tell you this. If you're someone that's looking to break into the medical sales industry, this interview is a must listen. If you're someone that's already in the medical sales industry, again, you got to listen to this interview. And if you're someone that's leading the way, there's something you can learn from Dorian as well. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that bring you insight. So I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hey, Dorian, how are we doing today?
Doing well, Sam. How are you?
Fantastic. No complaints over here. So I'm going to let you do the honors. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Dorian Jordan. I'm a senior medical sales representative for one of the big companies. I've been in the game for 16 years now. I've been in several different states. I currently reside in Southern California. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
16 years. You play no games. That's longevity right there. I'm sure you've seen a lot.
Yeah. No, I got in pretty young, started at the very bottom that you can be, just kind of running equipment to hospitals and just signing paperwork to where now I've done millions of dollars worth of products and been in the C-suite and done all kinds of stuff. So it's been quite a journey, taking me halfway across the United States, technically.
Wow. So what is your specific field right now?
Yeah, so a lot of what I do right now is I have stapling, so products that are used in the OR. And so I have stapling devices, energy devices, access devices. And the primary focus is general surgery, bariatrics, thoracics. And so I get sort of a wide range of the different procedures that we see every single day. So it's a lot of bread, butter, and repetitive stuff that you'll find on any OR board. And then some of the cases are very, high level as well. So advanced cases where we gotta, make sure that we're, patient's life is at stake, right? And so we do a lot of that type of stuff and oncology. And so wide range, but
Got it.
Really good devices, yeah.
Got it. So just to give everybody context, so, of course we have people listening right now that know exactly what you do. But then we have some people that are very curious and wanting to get into the industry and don't understand the terms you just laid out. So give us a little bit of what your day-to-day looks like. I mean, you're waking up at what time, you're doing what, and how does the rest of your day play out?
Yeah, so I have an interesting, one thing that I think is characteristics of a lot of us that have been in this industry. There's always got to be some sort of sacrifice, and so my current sacrifice being in Southern California is, where I live with my wife and family. We live in Orange County, good place to raise kids and live, right? But my territory is actually in Los Angeles proper, and so what that translates. Everybody's heard about the traffic situation out here in LA, and so that's the
only way to live out here.
Oh yeah, so that means I wake up early as hell and then I get home late, right? And so I made it home at a decent time today, but the 4:05, you gotta either go before it or duck under it, And so my typical day, I start off, waking up 5 something, kind of depending on where I have to go to. I think the quickest place I can get to is about 45 minutes away. And I think the farthest place, depending on traffic, out here, a lot of the surgeries start at like 7:30 in the morning. And even though I wear various hats within my role, a lot of the support roles where I'm actually involved in the cases, I do have to do a fair amount, like half my time is spent covering cases, I would say, the way things are currently structured. So I got to get up early, get there on time, make sure things are set up. And then from there, the good thing is I've put in the work already as far as making sure my staff and my surgeons and people are trained. So it's not often that I have to really stay for the whole entire case. It's just a matter of just making sure everything is right for the people, and then I might be on to the next deal. But from a geography standpoint and just like a business standpoint, got roughly $4 million worth of business. And so I can't be at every single thing. And so a lot of my work is still just kind of like networking and making sure things are good to go. But then I got to, problem solve and troubleshoot things oftentimes as well. And then sometimes I need to, do the entertaining aspect of the job too. And so maybe we have to do a dinner program or meet up with some surgeons and staff. And so I do probably one of those type of things a week. I'm just to kind of just, and that's relationship driving activities. Right. So I would say, I'm lucky if I have a day where I'm only working like 5 or 6 hours, the way my deal is actually currently set up. And that translates to add another 2 hours for just like drive time. And so it's a big sacrifice, but it's something that I actually appreciate. And believe it or not, even though I wake up at 5 or so in the morning, I'm not a morning person, so the drive actually helps. And so I don't want to talk. I don't want to wake up and be talking to somebody in 15 minutes, And so that drive to kind of find out what's going on in the world and listen to some music kind of gets me ready to go by the time I step foot up in the OR.
What time do you normally get home?
Just depends. If the day works out well and I can get underneath the traffic, I can get home by like 5. Sometimes. But if I miss that window, normally, like yesterday, I got home at 7. So I literally left that house that morning at 6:15, and I got home at 7 p.m. And I'm someone that's been doing it for 16 years. You should be on the golf course if you've been this far in your career. But now the grind doesn't go away. So,
got it.
If you're doing it the right way, yeah.
Right. And are your weekends compromised?
Not with this role, so I've had roles in the past where I was like on call 24/7, 365, holidays, birthdays, the whole thing. But my weekends are pretty good. Now my Friday, I don't really count that as part of the weekend, but Saturdays and Sundays, the things I like to do are normally able to occur. And on a rare occasion, if there is some sort of a surgery that is complex enough where they need help, I have no problem going in and doing that, and so, and I think that's also necessary. Like if you get opportunities to come in late at night or work on a weekend, you're also doubling down on your ability to deepen your relationships because, a lot of times these surgeons aren't getting the same staff that they're used to, and so they're counting on you to, kind of teach them on the fly and ensure that they get the outcome that they're looking for.
Right. No, it makes a lot of sense. And do you currently work with an associate sales rep?
I do. And so they're, the way it's structured at my company, they're not assigned to me as an individual. They kind of work for the entire team. But you're seeing sort of a shift nowadays to where, back in the day, 16 years ago, if you were an associate, maybe you worked for the entire team, but you just got paid an amount of money. Now we're starting to see associates getting held to a number. And so our associate program is one where, they have to actually hit a plan and hit a quota as well. And so my territory currently isn't involved in our associates' geography that they're technically held accountable to, but they're willing to, part of their growth process means that they need to, also come experience other people's, territories as well. And get a feel for their style as well. And so my associate actually worked with me yesterday for a couple of cases, and got a good feel and woke up this morning, to like complimentary messages like, I like your style. And, because our associate's relatively new. And so, a lot of value in there. And I'm someone that thinks a lot about associates because I came in on a level that was even underneath the associate level. And so I know what it's like to kind of go through that progress and see what it can become.
Got it. So then, wow. So with the way it works with you, the associate sales reps, they are responsible for covering a number of cases for the team, or they're actually given their own cases to cover?
Yeah, so we have a structure where it looks like this, right? Like my position as a senior role, right? On paper, my job should be pushing initiatives, introducing new products, deepening the relationships with surgeons, handling some other like administrative and personnel issues, you know,
Sure.
because the idea is the next step for me would be like a leadership position or some other position, right? And so
Sure.
that's where I'm at in my career. And so as I'm pushing these initiatives and doing these other responsibilities, sure, times come in, you know, where maybe I have that trust from the surgeon, I need to go take care of that case. And so the bread and butter stuff and procedures that are considered maybe a little bit more routine, the idea is that our associate reps can come in and handle that stuff. That way we look like, you know, hey, we're all over the business and we're here for
Right.
you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not necessarily there's like a number for them to hit in terms of like number of cases, but you know, we want them looking and learning and developing that ability to you know, develop their own sales process, their own
Right.
relationship building process. And so how
Right.
do we do that? The most effective way is hands down by, you know, providing support to cases and learning from these surgeons at the same time. And then, you know, maybe you take an idea that you saw this surgeon and you present it to another surgeon. And so that's what we're trying to create for our associates, right? It's just that ability to learn the business, but then maybe not be that impactful with it and eventually get to that point through exposure.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. All right. So take us back. You mentioned that you started below the associate sales rep level, but take us way back to college.
Yeah.
You know, you graduated. Was it, I'm going to be a medical sales rep, or you had no idea that industry even existed? Give us your story.
Yeah, definitely didn't know anything about being a medical sales rep, and so I'll be really transparent. So I was a college athlete at the University of Kansas. Shout out to the Jayhawks. And during that time, like I was political science major. I had every intention on becoming an attorney, and so I was preparing to go to law school, and then
Oh,
went
wow.
to went to nightclub and met a young lady. And then, you know, and a little bit farther down the road, found out that we were going to be expecting the first son, right? And so not necessarily in the plan or the strategy for the future. And I didn't think it was in the best interest to have her working with a brand new baby and then trying to, you know, like, you know, deal with me studying for law school, right? And so I remember I had a role as what we had this committee called the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. And so what that was a body of us student athletes, and we would do certain things. And I was the Jayhawk Job Network coordinator, right? So we would have little job fairs for companies that wanted to come in and hire athletes, right? And so I was the person that would set that up, and Enterprise Rent-A-Car was one of those companies. And so here I was like, I'm not going to law school. I got a baby on the way. I need to get some prenatal vitamins. I need to figure this out. I need some insurance, you know, like, you know, and I was a 21-year-old dude, you know, and so
Right.
so I actually remember Enterprise Rent-A-Car always coming to these job fairs. And so I got this job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And just this, you know, shortly after working there for about 6 months, or sorry, the 90 days, right? Then the benefits kicked in so I could get those prenatal vitamins. And then I think 90 days after
Wow.
that,
Wow.
my son was born, my first son, who's now 19 in college himself, which is crazy. So what happens is, you know, I really like turned on the hustle. I'm like, I don't want to
Yeah.
be in this apartment complex with the kid, you know,
Yeah.
playing near the dumpster. So I had to
Yeah.
really do well at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And
Sure.
so I ended up becoming the youngest manager that they'd ever had in the
Wow.
history. I was in Kansas City at this time. And
Mhm.
so I was there for about 4.5 years, right? And so again, no idea about anything, but I remember there was always like these people that had fleet deals, like their car was in the shop and they were dressed up and they were like, you know, these are pharmaceutical reps, and then these medical device reps would come in like, yeah, I do this, and I just never knew what they were talking about, right? And I'm just like,
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
crazy. Like, but they give you a card. Oh, that's kind of cool, you know. And so I had a general idea about it, and so then what happens? You go a little bit farther down the road. I'm about 4 years in, and then I end up having my second son. And so by the time that happens, I'm like this 80 hours a week stuff. I'm dealing with 40 other people, and I'm trying to be a dad at 23 years old, all this stuff to two kids. Like it became a little overwhelming. And so I'm like, I
Sure.
thought I need to back off. And so I became an insurance agent. And so I go to this insurance company, I'm selling car insurance. And then I kind of realized like, no, like this isn't it, sitting in a chair. Like I'm more mobile. And so around the same time, I only did this for like a couple months, right? I get a call from a recruiter, and
Mhm.
they actually are recruiting for medical devices, right? And they're
Mm.
just like, look, here's the deal. And two things that we're concerned about is, can you deal with blood and guts? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. And they were like, and it's also a crazy job. Like, you're going to be on call 24/7, 365. Like, it's a lot. And so we want to make sure. And I thought back to my enterprise, which had its crazy moments, like repossessing cars and stuff like that. I'm like, I think it's something that I could do. And they're like, but we're going to bring you in at the very lowest level. So your job at first is going to be to run the equipment around, so if somebody needs something over there, you got to take it. So it was like Uber Eats before that was even a thing, right? It was 16 years ago. And so I it takes a long time, but I get the job. I'm happy. I had a brand new little car. I had to trade it for a truck because I had to carry all this equipment around. But I decided back then that I wasn't going to just do what my job was. Like, I decided to work where I wanted to be, which would be like a super device rep. And by that time, I kind of had an idea that, some people back then were really making some paper, and I'm like, I need to get to that spot. Now I got my foot in the door, right? So I didn't just focus on running equipment. I was begging them to let me attend cases and watch things and learn things clinically. I focused on a teaching hospital, right? Because they had residents. And so I figured if they're teaching the residents, I could be getting a free, at this time it was orthopedics education as well. So let me become an expert by just being that fly on the wall in the room, still do my job running the equipment. And I started taking pictures of the sets and just really taking that deep dive. So when I got my opportunity, I would be ready to go. And a reoccurring theme throughout my medical journey is being overqualified to be qualified, right? And so I knew this at an early age. And so that's what happened. I only had to be that territory assistant position for 2 months, and then an associate role became open. And then that associate role was for the number one rep for that company at that time. And so this is to give you a perspective. This guy had a $5 million territory. He got paid 12% of that revenue.
Wow.
So he is making big bank. And he was paying me 1% of that, right? And so then all of a sudden there was a big windfall for like a humble kid from like me, and I'm like, man, I'm balling now. This is cool. But I was still getting my ass handed to me because it was just like 80 hours a week again, missing kids' birthdays. But I knew it was all for a purpose, right? And so from there, that job, I worked for that for 22 months. Underneath this guy, and it was challenging. We can talk a whole bunch about this because the guy that I was working for, super successful, but he was also, for lack of a better term, a hillbilly. And so he had some very questionable things that would come out of his mouth sometimes. I'm just like, yeah, I don't know, bro. Like, you might be getting a little too comfortable with me, And so it was hard. And when I got the opportunity to take on my first territory, he wasn't going to give me any of his territory, even though it's a lot of money for him to have. But I was given the option to move to Grand Rapids, Michigan, Yuma, Arizona, or San Diego. San Diego was expensive. Yuma, Arizona was like the hills have eyes. So I was a little weirded out about that. And then I was like, Grand Rapids from Kansas City, like, I don't want to go nowhere colder. And so I was like, I gotta think about this. And so I go look at the Yuma deal, and then that manager was like, I got an opportunity in Vegas. And so I ended up getting that role in Vegas. And then, what do we know about Vegas? It's 24-hour city. It's crazy. And I'm already doing a 24/7 crazy 365 job. So my life was absolutely bananas, but it really set the tone to show and showcase what I was capable of as a rep. And so when I finally got that opportunity after being an associate for 22 months, I go to Vegas and I damn near doubled my business and became like just a force of nature. And
how long were you in Vegas for?
So I was in Vegas for 7 years total. For that company, I was in that role for 3 years. And then had some personal challenges with my then marriage. And so then that was what led to the next change. And so I couldn't be a single dad with a 365, crazy schedule anymore and be on call.
So what was the field in Vegas?
So Kansas City and Vegas were both orthopedic trauma. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And so I was plate, screws, nails, blood, and guts.
Trauma. Plate, screws, and okay. Give us some more depth. What does it look like, the life of orthopedic trauma?
Well, I remember my favorite thing is when I left that world after 5 years, somebody said, "You finally left the cult." So, and the thing is, you got to be built different to understand what it's like to be at that time tied to a pager. So we're talking 16 years ago. For those of
Sure.
the people out there that don't know what a pager is, like a little black thing and it had a little number and you had to call the number back when it beeped in the middle of the night. And then they would tell you, "Oh, we got something rolling back. We got bilateral femurs." And so it's a crazy job because you are on call. It's not like you're saying it. Like, you have to understand that, like, these are orthopedic procedures, so they're fractures to your extremities, right? That
Sure.
is not scheduled, that is not planned. These are accidents, right? This could be a shooting and you got your arm shot, and so now we have to get the board out
Right.
and fix that, right? Like, so it's
Right.
all kinds of crazy stuff. And the other thing is, people, there's run of the mill stuff. You might break an ankle, break a wrist. That kind of stuff happens to people, and you have to fix it as well. But what happens is, again, that's not scheduled. So you have people that might do total joints or sports medicine stuff, but then they take the call, and so then they're putting these trauma cases on at 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m.
Wow.
after they've
Yeah.
done their scheduled stuff. And so
Yeah.
if you're trying to go home and watch the latest episode of The Bachelorette and you don't have a DVR, like, it doesn't work. And so it's a
The
tremendous.
latest episode of The Bachelor. I
Hey,
gotcha.
that's relevant because all these medical sales rep exposures have happened because people that were on The Bachelorette and The Bachelor, and they're like, "Oh yeah." Like, even the last dude is like worked for one of the companies that does orthopedics, right? But anyway, I digress. But
Now that I didn't know. That I did not know.
well, I have a wife that occasionally watches that show, and I'm like trying to eat something, so I get stuck watching a couple of
That is
episodes. But it's
hilarious.
okay. But yeah, man. So you're basically doing a lucrative career that's making you sacrifice all the time that you value the most, which is like the weekends, the nights. There were days, I'm not joking, where I was up for 22 hours because I became a specialist. And so if you had complicated stuff, I was working with those surgeons. So let's say you
Wow.
had a car wreck and you broke your pelvis. Your pelvis is not an easy thing to put back together because it's
Right.
three-dimensional. A bone breaks like this, put it back and put a plate on it, you're
Right.
good. Pelvis, where your proximal hip fits into the acetabulum, which is the cup. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if that acetabulum breaks, you got to put the cup back together and then figure out
Mm-hmm.
how to put screws in at the right angle so they're not poking through into the joint. So these are cases that take 10 hours,
Wow.
and so I had days that were like that. I had days that almost broke me, where I was just like, you know, I can think of a time where I was out on a date with the mother of my kids, and it's three
Mm-hmm.
o'clock in the morning in Las Vegas, and I get a call. It's Dr. Silverberg. I got a wrist fracture. I'm gonna put on at 7 a.m. Make sure all my stuff is ready to go. I'm looking at the clock. It's 3 a.m. And I'm like, yeah, and it's at Mountain View Hospital, and I'm like, Mountain View Hospital doesn't even have the equipment. I can't tell him that, so I got to figure this out. And so
Right.
I'm like, "I'll be there, Dr. Silverberg. Thanks. I appreciate the business." And then now I'm like running, trying to sneak into another hospital, bag it up,
Right.
show up there, call the house supervisor to make sure that it's okay that I can bring this in a bag from their sister facility. Got an angry wife, because now we got to end the date, and I'm walking into the OR without a shower, smelling like the nightclub, like just trying to, "Hey, Dr. Silverberg, how's it
Wow.
going?" So
Right.
this is
Right.
like, this is real story, like,
Sure.
and that's that life. So it's very, very different. I could
Mm-hmm.
handle 5 years of that, and then I was
Wow. Okay.
ready to change it up after that.
So what so in that fifth year, what really caused the transition? You said, okay, I'm hanging this up. We're done with this.
Well, yeah. So part of it obviously was forced, right? Because I
Okay.
had to, like, I could not, I didn't want to, I've never wanted to be a bad dad or anything like that. And so
Sure.
I can't
Yeah.
just have little kids and be like, "Dad's got to go take care of someone's hip fracture.
Be
Here's
gone
some
all the
food.
time.
Here's
Right.
some food. You guys will be good. Don't tell your mom I'm leaving you here alone."
Right.
Like, I couldn't do that. Right. And so I had to kind of make that change, but I also had to make it in a way that actually made sense. And what made sense to me at that time was to, again, advance the needle a little bit more by getting more experience. And so I was an expert at orthopedic trauma, but I didn't know
Okay.
about anything else. And so I thought about the surgical instrument world, right? Because one thing I know for sure is every surgery, for the most part, needs some level of surgical instrument. And so I thought I could get exposed to general surgery. I could get exposed to spine. I can get exposed to OBGYN. I can get exposed to heart by selling instruments. I'm selling instruments. That doesn't mean I need to support the case because the doctors know how to use the tools, right? And so maybe occasionally, but man, I could probably have more flexibility that way. And so I found myself working for, at that time, the company doesn't exist anymore, but it was called Care Fusion. They spun off from Cardinal Health. They got bought out by BD. So the roles are still out there. But that was a job where the only real structural challenge was, this was the first job I had where I had to cover multiple states. And so I was based in Las Vegas, covered Utah, Wyoming, and Idaho. And so every other week I did have to hop on a plane and go provide customer service, engage with those customers or whatever. But it was easier to navigate. Maybe not as lucrative as orthopedic trauma, because orthopedic trauma is perfect for a hunter, right? You keep what you kill. And this is more of a capital kind of sale, more of a, how is your budget looking? Can we maybe do this? Let's take care of this over 90 days, right? It's not transactional, right? It's more like, there's processes to it. But it gave me a great way to kind of learn the business side of things and learn how to deal with it.
Considering you came from so much excitement and trauma and really having your schedule given to you, whereas with your space with Cure Fusion, you're now responsible for completely organizing your schedule to make it sense in a really strategic way. How did you enjoy that in comparison?
I loved it because there's so much strategy to it, right? And then for me, it was interesting. I came into what would be considered a conservative company, and then here I was, this dude in Vegas and all these tattoos and and so, I just remember, and then I was like, I'm not going to do this like everybody else. I'm going to bring myself and do what makes sense. And that was what the strategy was. And so I wasn't told I needed to go to Utah every week, but what it was I was like, I'll go every other week just so they think I actually live up there, and they're not sure. So it's like, I call it keeping my taste in their mouth. Right. And so transactional rep gets the deal and then they go somewhere else. I was like, I want them to see if there's other instrument companies, I wanted to be there the most. And so it gave me the freedom to figure stuff out. And if it didn't work, I could change it up and do something different. And one of the things I talk about with that role is I borrowed a page from what I knew about Las Vegas. Las Vegas is a city that is built off of nickel and penny slots. We hear about these people that are playing blackjack, $100,000 a hand, or the casino gave them a Mercedes or something like that. We hear about that, but that's not how Vegas is built. It's built one quarter, a nickel, or whatever at a time. That's why when you walk in there, there's so much slot machines and everything, and they call that low rolling or low rollers, right? So I took that approach to my business of selling instruments. Like, at the end of the day, the dollar spends the same way. And so if I go to this little account that everybody ignores and I get 10,000 from them, go to another surgery center, get 5,000 from them, maybe in 5 accounts, I can get that $50,000 that I'm sitting there waiting for the cycle to happen at this big, the big account that everybody's after. Right. So I changed the way I did my strategy. And I was at Care Fusion for 6 years. And there was 1 year I missed my plan and I was at 96%. No, I'm sorry, 98.6%. I still remember the number. So everybody's like, how do you do that year after year? It's because I said, I do it different than you. That's why. And so that was the beauty of that job, So that's how that experience went.
That is so cool. All right, so that was all Care Fusion. Then you went ahead to Baxter. Tell us a little bit about that. What happened that made you say, you know what, I'm gonna change companies?
Yeah. So at 6 years, there was the chatter, and they started really encourage me to look into being a leader, take on a management role or whatever the case may be within BD, right? So I interviewed for a role, got beat out. Fair and square, guy had been around a little bit longer, carried himself a little bit different, still left a bad taste in my mouth because, you walk into that and I would have been managing the whole entire West Coast of the United States. There was 9 reps at that time. I had letters of recommendation from 7 of them, so I was like, so I was clearly the heir apparent. And instead they hired a guy that was maybe a little bit more refined and polished, and didn't have the same results, actually didn't even carry the same bag. So it was
Wow.
fascinating. Like he worked for the same company, but it's in a different division. And
Sure.
so it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. And I thought, look, just like I would expect it out of myself, I would expect this leader to be around for a while. And so for me, it's like I don't really have anything left to prove. I've proven that I can hit my number basically 6 years in a row and get these presidents clubs, do all these different things. It was time for me to think about, well, what else could I do? I've been away from the OR for a while. Maybe I can get back to the OR, but just maybe do it a little bit more different that is compatible with the way my life is, but still gives me that same fix of doing the business. And then at that time, Baxter presented that for me, and so Baxter was a more of a biologics job. And so you have those elements where it's important for you to be supporting the surgeries, right? And because they're focused on CV space, they're focused on GYN space, and so because that job was biologics that help control bleeding. Every surgery bleeds. So it's kind of still it's almost like a combination of everything I was already doing. So I get the clinical exposure like I had doing orthopedics, right? I get the broad range of things that I can learn and tackle, just like surgical instruments, because bleeding happens in every surgery for the most part, right? And so it presented itself, and and the money was good, and so I was like, let's do that. And then it was also, by this time I'd already moved to Los Angeles as well. And so it was a great way to establish myself in the OR community in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. And
Yeah.
so I took that job. And so I was there for about 3.5. And then I would say the biggest takeaway from that 3.5 years were, part of that time was at the pandemic, and so when the pandemic when that hit, right, you know, what else did that come with? It came with a racial reckoning when you think about the George Floyd stuff.
Yep. Yep.
And so I was at that time working on a team where I was the only person of color.
Wow.
And that's in Los Angeles, mind you, right? The super
Hmm.
diverse city. And
Yeah.
so certain things started happening. And I think up until that point, I had never really found my voice as being an African American male in a industry where we do not have a lot of representation at all. It was a lot
Yeah.
worse 16 years ago, where I would consider myself a pioneer because, you know, I walked into a meeting for the first company, and I think there was only one other person that looked like me out of like 800, right? And so it's come a long way, right? But at Baxter, here we are, and certain things were said with the different things that were happening around LA, and I just got to a point to where I'm just like, I can't listen to this anymore. Like, for my kids, maybe they want to do what I'm doing. I don't want to gaslight my sons if they say I want to be a medical sales rep. I gotta say something, right? And so I ended up getting a platform to become the lead person for that company, that division's diversity inclusion task force, because they realized that you have a company with maybe 300 people in sales, and 9 of those people were people of color from any race, right?
Yeah.
And so they knew that they needed to do better, right? And so they enlisted me. And I remember having that conversation, set up that meeting with the vice president that was there. And I remember, and she was like, she gets on this call, it's a Zoom, and then I share my screen, and I show her, I'm like, I put together something for you. And so it's like an 8-page document. And it had all
Wow.
these things talking, like starting with definitions, like for microaggressions, like all this
Yeah.
different stuff. And she was blown away. And I'm like, look, I understood the assignment, and there's people like myself that have been walking around with a lot of this stuff that haven't been using our voice for years. And
Right.
since you're giving me the platform, I appreciate it, but I'm not going to hold back. And so I shared a lot of these different things. And I really think it made that organization kind of wake up in a lot of ways, but it also
Wow.
made me use my voice a lot more. And so I had to start producing content and writing articles. And I had, some pushback stuff where they had to, like, I remember one of the topics where I decided to do an article on unpacking Black Lives Matter, because you had a lot of different people. And this wasn't like a pro or con. It was just like, let me just, don't
Sure.
listen to the news. This is what here's the historical reference thing. And I remember they
Right.
said, this is going to be too much, and I'm like, well, that's weird because I heard the vice president say it, and she happens to be a white lady. I'm like, but it's too much for me to say something like, and I'm not even saying I'm supporting it. I'm just saying, hey, here's the truth. Here's the origin. So it rubbed me the wrong way, and then ironically, at the president that was in office at that time goes, it's illegal to teach diversity and inclusion in government and government entities, right? And so I have executive order to ban that, right? And so that organization says, we need to be in line because the government's a big customer of ours. And I'm just like,
wow.
And I'm just like, I was like, we're not even doing anything. I'm just writing some articles that are optional to click on. Like they don't even. I was like, this is crazy.
And that was Dorian Jordan, part 1. So again, make sure you tune in next week for part 2. But really, what I love about interviewing Dorian is he doesn't hold back. He lets you know what he really thinks. He lets you know what's really going on. He has a level of candor that can only be appreciated and is very refreshing. So maybe you're someone that's looking to get into the medical sales industry and you listened to this interview and you're thinking to yourself, he's doing something that I actually want to do. But maybe you haven't even started yet, or you've been scouring the internet, applying left and right and not hearing anything back. Or maybe you've actually gotten some interviews, but you're not getting any traction. You're not getting past the second round or even the third round. Or you've been spending all your days on LinkedIn reaching out to random sales reps, hoping someone will give you some time. I gotta applaud all of your efforts. But if you're looking for a way to finally make this dream happen, then you need to visit evolveyoursuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role, give us a little bit of information, and have a call with one of us here at Evolve Your Success and learn how you can have a career-changing experience and finally get into the dream job that you've been listening to through these episodes and other episodes day after day after day. Stop wondering, stop thinking, stop guessing, and just take action. EvolveYourSuccess.com, select Attain Medical Sales Role. And if you're someone that's in the industry and you want this to be your year, you have what it takes, but for whatever reason you've gotten a little stagnant, you've kind of hit a plateau, you can level up a bit, and for whatever reason you haven't actually taken action. Well, again, visit EvolveYourSuccess.com, select Improve Sales Performance, and take a look at our sales training program. Give us a little bit of information and schedule some time with us, and let's have a conversation about how we can turn your performance all the way around and get you to winner circle this year and truly make your dreams happen. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that give you insight, perspective, resources of what happens in the medical sales industry and how to change performance, how to improve lives, how to change careers within this space. So thank you for listening, and make sure you tune in next week for another episode of the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.